Hello everybody, it's nysclips and welcome back to another video. Skins UK is a hit British dramedy series that premiered on January 25th, 2007. This is one of my favorite shows in the entire world. So any opportunity I have to just yap on and on about it, I will take it. I have 2-hour-long deep dives on generations 1 and 2 of this show. And if you've seen those, then you would know that I'm not the biggest fan of Generation 3, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip over that and go straight into analyzing the 7th and final season of Skins. This video specifically will not take the format of my deep dives where I'm like standing in front of my wall, but this video will rather be a recap and in-depth analysis of the overall plot of the season and a discussion on whether I thought this was the perfect culmination and wrap-up of the beloved series, or whether it was a complete flop and a disgrace to its legacy. Okay, so the 7th and final season of Skins is unlike the final season of any show I've ever watched. This season basically serves as an epilogue. You know when you finish a book, you read the last chapter, and then you have a short few pages afterwards that highlights where a character is in a later portion of their lives. That's what season 7 is. This season follows the lives of 3 major characters, Effy, Cassie, and Cook. I think this was an excellent selection of characters to choose. I mean, each and every character was impactful in their own way, but there's just something about this trio. There is no way you can walk away from having watched Skins without all 3 of these characters having evoked a strong sense of emotion out of you. And if you did walk away without being emotionally affected by one of these 3 characters, then I don't know what to tell you. Each of these characters are given 2 episodes in the season, and they each have their own title. Effy's episodes are titled Fire, Cassie's episodes are titled Pure, and Cook's are titled Rise. So what I'm going to be doing is for each part, Fire, Pure, and Rise, I will give a summary of the plot, what I did and didn't like about it, how bad or well it tied into the previous events of the show. Then I'm going to give each part a rating out of 10, and then at the end I will give my overall season 7 thoughts and opinions. Skins Fire. Effy is working a dead-end job as an assistant or like a receptionist at an asset management firm, and if you don't know what that is basically a company that takes money and assets from other companies and they invest those assets for them to optimize their shareholder value. A whole bunch of boring that I should honestly know a little bit more about since I was a business major, but I just don't. So anyways, Effy is an assistant there. She folds papers, gets coffee, does busy work for the big dogs, the investors, the traders. There's one trader in particular named Victoria who treats Effy really bad, and Victoria and the big boss Jake are sleeping with each other. One thing about this big boss Jake, a lot of people say that he looks just like Freddy.
You know who this motherfucker look like, low-key? Look!
Honestly, me personally, I think it's just a coincidence, but what do you guys think? Do you think it was intentional that they put in this guy who looks like Freddy? If it was intentional, then they sure did a job at doing anything with it. Effy has this shy, nerdy coworker from another department named Dominic who has a little crush on her. Because when is anyone ever not crushing on Effy? Someone not crushing on her is a non-existent concept.
Well, everybody loves me.
Effy's living situation. She's actually roommates with our beloved Naomi. Effy and Naomi roomies, fun. But no, not fun at all, because Naomi is in the trenches, okay? She is unemployed. She doesn't do anything but smoke, drink, and party all day. She apparently wants to be a stand-up comedian, and to me this doesn't really make sense because when was she ever just like cracking jokes? I mean, she did used to crack jokes here and there.
You couldn't make me feel alright if you stapled your tongue to my clit and stood on a cement mixer.
But like, was it stand-up comedian worthy? When she goes on stage to do these jokes, she's not even funny and she gets booed off stage, and Naomi's life just really sucks. It sucks so bad, and it's gonna get even worse at the end of the first episode. So Effy, even though she's just a lowly assistant, she actually knows a lot about the industry. So Effy starts trying to climb the company ladder, and eventually she does. She becomes a trader alongside Victoria and Jake and all the other big dogs at the company. However, at first Effy is isn't doing too well. So in order to redeem herself, she ends up committing insider trading by asking Dominic, remember Dominic, the nerdy coworker who has a crush on her, the guy she never ever thought twice about until she needed something from him. Yeah, she asks him for confidential information about a client, and she ends up using this information to buy some shares and make her company money. So this is insider trading, and it is illegal. Effy really plays with Dominic. She plays on the fact that he likes her. Effy is not interested in this man at all, but she will often flirt with him, kiss him on the cheek in order to get this illegal information out of him, and it's really giving the same old Effy. Same old trickster, emotionally manipulative Effy Stoneham. Jake, he starts to get a little inappropriate with Effy. He's whispering in her ear on the sales floor. He's throwing flirty little comments at her, and they even kiss right before a very important meeting. Speaking of this meeting, the writers really thought they were doing something here. So here's what happens. Effy and Jake go into this meeting with an investor that they are working with. And this investor is like, hey, hi, meet my associate Freddie. So obviously the audience is sitting there like, ooh, Freddie? The Freddie? But no, the camera cuts to this associate and it's just some random ass guy.
You know my associate Freddie?
Yes, I've heard of you.
Who the fuck is this nigga?
If we're gonna talk about Freddie, just talk about him. Don't trick and play with the audience like that. I don't know why it was so hard for them to just mention Freddie. I'm gonna talk about this a lot more after the recap, but anyways, remember how I said Naomi's life is gonna end up sucking a lot more than it already does? At the end of this episode, Naomi ends up revealing to Effy that she has been diagnosed with cancer. By episode 2, Effy and Jake are just full on now. Effy ends up telling Jake that she committed insider trading, and Jake is just okay with it. He actually tells her to help him do it too. So together, Effy and Jake are just living a life of white-collar crimes, sex, drugs, parties. Effy is really just living a corporate finance bro's dream life. Meanwhile, Naomi is fighting for her life. Emily is back visiting from New York, but Naomi has not told Emily that she has cancer, and she doesn't want Effy to tell her either. They just don't tell Emily, and this is really f***ed up. So here's where things start to get really bad for everyone. Eventually, the FSA, the Financial Services Authority, yeah, they're on to Effy. They know that she is up to some illegal activity in the office. Jake, he completely sells her out. He tells the FSA that there was no other company involvement in the insider trading outside of Effy. But remember, he was trading with her too. He literally asked her to help him do it as well. So he's just lying. And he's just a complete scumbag. So Effy, she's going to jail, okay? So since Effy is in trouble, Dominic is scared too, since he is the one who provided her with this illegal, confidential information. So when Dominic freaks out on Effy about how she got him into all of this mess, she kisses him and sleeps with him. Same old manipulation tactics that she has been doing to him throughout these 2 episodes. Justice for Dominic. I honestly don't even know why Effy didn't like him for real, because it's not like he was ugly. You know, he's cute. Naomi gets a lot worse. Her health deteriorates more and more, and can I just say that her performance is out of this world. She really just sells the exhaustion, the pain, and the heartbreak so well. But anyways, she's getting a lot worse. Her treatment is not working. While Effy is awaiting her inevitable trial and jail time, she finally decides to tell Emily that Naomi has cancer. And when Emily gets to town, she slaps Effy for keeping this information from her. I do think Effy deserved this slap in general, but not because she kept the cancer secret. I don't really feel like that was on her. If your best friend who had cancer is telling you, please don't tell my significant other, would you tell or not? I don't know. I think it's certainly a difficult situation, and I don't think Effy necessarily deserved to be slapped for that in particular. However, Emily does tell Effy, you did not deserve this time with her. You stole it from me.
You didn't even deserve this time with her.
You stole it from me.
And I do fully agree with that part. Catherine Prescott, who plays Emily, also gives a stellar performance here. She portrays the heartbreak of losing the love of her life and the feeling that comes with having this limited time that is just ticking away. She just portrays that so well. In the end, Naomi presumably dies and Effy goes to jail. When watching the first 30 or so minutes of this, I was thinking, why do I give a single about Effy working at an asset management firm? Out of all the plots in the world they could have picked, they chose this. But as the drama started to pick up, I actually started to grow quite fond of this plotline. We saw how crafty, clever, smart, and schemish Effy and Tony were. So seeing her go into this industry that is very like high pressure and cutthroat, and seeing her manipulate and scheme to get ahead, honestly, it made perfect sense. If we got to see Tony in this job, I'm sure it would have been even more high stakes and toxic. Like, I would love to see Tony as a traitor. Honestly, maybe Skins Fire should have been about him. Another big aspect that I quite liked about Fire was that we got to see how Effy really has not changed one bit, in the sense that she's still playing with people's emotions. She's also not the best friend to Naomi. You can tell that Effy loves Naomi dearly. However, throughout Skins Fire, Effy was just living in this corporate fantasy world while Naomi was struggling. And there's even one scene where Naomi literally tells Effy, "I wish you would just at least come home and watch TV with me."
And I've been sitting at home on my own, hoping that my best friend might just come home and watch TV with me.
It's that simple. It's the little things that Effy failed to realize were important. One thing that really irritated me about Skins Fire is that there was not nearly enough connection from the events of Gen 2. And don't get me wrong, I'm very well aware that the intention was not for it to be like a spin-off, you know? It wasn't supposed to be a direct continuation of the events from Gens 1 and 2, where we are gonna see all the characters and we're gonna talk about every little thing that happened in the past. I don't think that was the intention of season 7. I feel like it's supposed to be a piece, a snapshot, and a slice of life of these characters during a short period of time in their adulthood. So in Cassie's story, for instance, it would be fine if there was not really any information or connection to Gen 1, because Gen 1 ended and closed out really nicely. Like, the only mystery about the ending of Gen 1 would be Cassie and Sid's relationship, but you can pretty much guess how that ended up. But for Gen 2, we all know that ended terribly. And every time I finish watching Gen 2, I'm just left with this unsatisfactory, confused feeling. And therefore, I feel like that's why we needed more answers and more connection. So in that regard, I think the writers missed a huge mark. Another note, I wanted to see Effy crash out a little bit more. I wanted to see her crash out. She went through so much in these 2 episodes. She had a relationship with her boss that she thought was a real, genuine connection, but he just ended up being a scumbag who didn't care whether she lived or died and sold her out the very second he was in trouble. She went to jail. Her best friend was dying of cancer. Another one of her best friends felt deeply betrayed by her and slapped her. I just feel like in the midst of all this turmoil, Effy, for the most part, was rather calm through it all and held everything together pretty well. And in no way am I saying that people can't change and learn how to regulate and stabilize their emotions, but we know how sad Effy used to get when her friends were upset with her. We saw how she would get these intense emotional reactions whenever she had a slight conflict with any of her friends. We know how frantic she would get when she felt like the world was crumbling beneath her feet. And I feel like that kind of emotional fragility doesn't just go away in a couple of years, especially after losing the love of her life in the manner that she did. Like, literally the entire reason she struggled so hard to attach to Freddie in the first place is because she had an avoidant attachment style that involved fear of abandonment. So the fact that she lost Freddie in such an abrupt manner, it could almost feel like she was abandoned by him. And I just know that had to f her up. And even though it's been a couple of years, I still feel like we as an audience deserved a little bit of insight into the emotional and mental impact of not only losing Freddie, but also just the that she was going through in these 2 episodes. A couple final thoughts. Great cinematography. This goes for all of the parts too. Fire, Pure, and Rise. Season 7 is beautiful. It's definitely a visually pleasing experience. Can we also talk about Effy's outfits? She was a fashion icon as a teen, and she remains a fashion icon in her 20s. She is eating these office outfits up. All in all, I think Skins Fire was dramatic, poignant, and entertaining. If it were a complete standalone show in itself, I would definitely watch it. I would love to see Effy commit more white-collar crimes and have scandalous, inappropriate relationships with her bosses. I would love to see more Dominic lore and toxic, manipulative storylines with him and Effy. I would love to see more Naomi and Emily, and a stretched out, elongated version with Naomi being sick and how that coincides with Emily's life of chasing her dreams in America. So yeah, I really truly did enjoy the premise and the outline of Skins Fire. So I think overall, out of 10, I would give this a 7.5. Skins Pure. Honestly guys, I thought Skins Pure was so boring. Cassie is living in a shitty community house apartments. She works a shitty waitress job. In this episode, we find out that Cassie's mom is dead and that her little brother Ruben, who was just a baby in season 1, is now 6 years old and living with Cassie's father in a little beach town in the UK. Cassie talks to one of her housemates and she tells her how before she came back to the UK, she was in America with a boy and that they traveled a lot, but they eventually broke up. Sid? It makes sense that she would be talking about Sid because he did go looking for her in New York after Chris's death. If you watched my Gen 1 deep dive, then you would know that I don't really ship Cassie and Sid. So the fact that they were not in game is fine by me. Cassie has this coworker named Yaniv who wants to her. Some girl approaches Cassie at work and shows her some photos of her that were actually taken without her knowledge. So basically, someone is out there stalking Cassie. At first, I suspected the stalker to be the Yaniv guy because Yaniv is always popping up. Like, wherever Cassie is, somehow Yaniv is also there. However, the stalker is not Yaniv. It's actually another one of Cassie's freaky co-workers named Jacob. At first, Cassie is repulsed that this guy Jacob has been taking photos of her, but then she realizes she likes the attention, so she agrees to model for him. She also takes Jacob to visit her dad and her little brother Ruben, and she actually talks a lot about her family dynamic that we got to see in Gen 1, how the dad used to always do paintings of her mother and how they were so obsessed with each other but paid no attention to her, and how she would literally starve herself to death in order to get their attention. Thank you. We're actually going deeper into important subject matter from the past. And like I said, I understand that, you know, season 7, the intentions are not just to be a blast from the past and talk about everything and every character that there was. However, you know, these things leave an impact on these characters' lives and they're forever changed by what happened to them as teens and how they grew up. And Cassie's dynamic with her family is one of those things that is just going to stay with her forever. So I am glad that the writers finally chose not to dance around a subject and they just talk about it straight up. I wish they could have done that with Freddie. Anyways, Cassie's dad is sort of showing the same neglectful behaviors to her little brother Ruben because Ruben is supposed to be in school, but the dad just doesn't pay much attention to that or care, and it really angers Cassie because she does not want the same thing that happened to her happening to Ruben. Later on down the line, people see some of Cassie's photos that Jacob took of her, and so Cassie gets the opportunity to start modeling professionally. Jacob, he doesn't like that very much. He tells her that she's doing clothes porn and yells at her, and I'm like, oh yeah, he is a weirdo freak. And then there's still Yaniv, her other co-worker. He keeps asking to walk her home, and Cassie's like, no, I don't want you to know where I live. But he keeps persisting, and at this point, I don't know who is the bigger weirdo, Yaniv or Jacob. They both creep me out beyond levels that I can even describe, and I don't understand the point of either of them, quite frankly. Like, can someone please help me understand what these two guys represent to Cassie and what they contribute to her storyline and her arc? because I personally just don't get it. In the past, the writers used to do such a good job at establishing this sort of metaphoric structure with Cassie's relationships, but Yennefer and Jacob, like, who are these guys? Like, what is their purpose? Skins Pure ends with Cassie's dad moving to Italy, and originally he was going to take Ruben with him, but Cassie decides that she wants to keep Ruben and take care of him while the dad goes away to Italy. Not gonna lie, I think the dad was like, whew, thank you. Her parents just sucked, and I don't think they were ever meant to have children. The ending of Skins Pure was really, really sweet. It pulled at my heartstrings quite a bit, but other than the heartfelt ending, did you guys actually enjoy that? Something I did enjoy, which I already kind of talked about, the fact that we got to go a tad bit deeper into the dynamic that Cassie had with her parents, because it was very quick in Gen 1. We saw her parents in one scene in Cassie's episode, but the second episode of Pure did a nice job at tying that in. I also liked how, similarly to Effy's story, we got to see how Cassie hadn't really changed much at her core. She's still this soft girl who desires nothing more than to be seen. At first, she's upset that Jacob is taking pictures of her without her knowledge, but then she realizes she craves that attention. She likes being noticed. She wants to be seen, and that is really simply all Cassie has ever wanted from the beginning. So I do like the way that they kind of tied that in with the photo storyline. I think it could have been done a lot better. Like, we could have went about it in so many different ways, and the romantic aspect could have been done so much better as well. And honestly, it would have been interesting to see Cassie in this really intense love triangle like we got to see with Effy, Freddie, and Cook. Also, can we just talk about that damn theme music? Oh my gosh, it was so annoying. At the beginning of the first episode, I was like, oh, this theme music is really pretty. It really encapsulates the softness and the tenderness that comes with Cassie's character. However, they used this music so much. It was like every 5 seconds, and at a certain point, it became incessant. My final rating for Skins Pure is gonna have to be a 3 out of 10. Last but not least, we have Skins Rise. Finally, something good. So Cook is working as a drug dealer and he is sleeping in his car. He is some girl named Emma who works at a gas station, and after he sleeps with her at the beginning of the episode, he immediately tells her that he needs a place to stay. So right from the jump, we can see how transactional this relationship is, at least from Cook's side. And it's sad because you can tell that this Emma girl genuinely likes Cook, and I will talk about their relationship dynamic later, but for now, what I will say about Emma is justice for her. She quite literally had the worst and most undeserving ending out of everybody in these 2 episodes. Okay, so anyways, Cook, he's not just a drug dealer for himself, but he actually sells drugs for his boss, Louis. Okay, so Cook works for this guy, Louis, and it's kind of giving he is Louis's assistant slash slave, because he does little tasks for him, like going to the grocery store for him, selling drugs for him, and he just does all the administrative work for Louis. So one particular weekend, Louis asks Cook to be a chauffeur for his girlfriend, Charlie. He's like, yeah, me and Charlie are buying a house, so Cook, I need you to drive her around to go see the houses. So Cook takes Charlie to tour some houses, and in one of these houses, Charlie strips of her clothes and jumps into the pool. And Charlie is like, oh my gosh, come on, get in, jump in. And Cook is like, no, I'm not getting in, and you actually need to get the f out and stop playing with me. Cook's characterization in these episodes is so intriguing, because in Skins Fire and Skins Pure, Effy and Cassie more or less still possessed a lot of their same traits, but Cook, he's changed. He is not the same person he was back in the day. So if you were coming into Skins Rise hoping to see the same old loud, boisterous, crazy, reckless Cook, you're gonna be really upset, because that is just not who he is anymore. At this point in Cook's life, he is more quiet, serious, straight to the point, and I actually like this a lot. I think it made so much sense to go in this direction with his personality. Later on, Cook has a meeting with Louis, and Louis seems to be very suspicious of Charlie and whether or not she is being faithful to him. Louis does not like the idea of Charlie cheating on him, and he even goes into this little monologue about how much he absolutely cannot deal with infidelity and how he just gets really, really angry whenever people try to go behind his back.
Angry, mate. I get real fucking angry. Sometimes.
So at this point, Louis is really scary. Later on, Cook actually peeps his co-worker Jason having sex with Charlie. So Charlie is indeed cheating on Louis. Cook does some more chauffeur work for Charlie. They get to talking, and eventually Cook reveals to Charlie that he killed someone recently. Now, there is a big fan theory that the person who Cook killed is John Foster, Effy's therapist from season 4, who ended up killing Freddie. I'll talk more about this later. Anyways, long story short, Charlie and Cook end up having sex in the car. Shortly after this, Louis calls a meeting with him, Cook, Jason, and Charlie. He calls them all in for a meeting, and so you know what this means. He knows something. What he knows is that Charlie and Jason have been f***ing. So you know what he does? He violently kills Jason. He literally drowns Jason in a pool, and it's very eerie to watch because we literally see like the full 2.5 minutes that it takes for Jason to suffocate underneath the water. And this is pretty much the moment where I knew that Skin's Rise was going to be way more entertaining than the previous 4 episodes. So Louis kills Jason, but not Cook. So he must not know that Cook slept with Charlie. So therefore, Cook immediately takes Emma. Remember Emma, the girl he was sleeping with before? He takes her and they leave town because they had been talking about leaving town together in the past. However, Cook and Emma barely get 2 miles down the road before Cook turns around and goes to get Charlie. Right here is where Emma should have just hopped out of the car and never talked to Cook again, because why am I suddenly and abruptly leaving town with you and this random girl who you're screwing behind my back? Obviously, this is not a good situation to be in. So I don't know why Emma did not just leave, but obviously she was very clearly attached to Cook, because even though she was upset about him sleeping with Charlie, she still lets Cook seduce her and sleep with her again. And it's all just very messy. Like, I pray that this kind of toxic attachment never finds me. Anyways, Emma leads Cook and Charlie to her parents' country house. So they stay there, but the next day, Louis immediately finds them because there was a tracker on Cook's car. Yeah, Cook did not think this through very much, but you know what? I don't even blame him, because if I had just slept with this guy's girlfriend and just witnessed him murder another guy for doing the same thing, I would have dipped the very next second too. But at the same time, that's really not a smart decision, because him leaving basically gave it away to Louis that he must have slept with Charlie as well. Anyways, Louis finds them, confronts them, and Cook and Charlie are like, just leave, Louis, just leave. We'll pretend like none of this ever happened. And Louis says, okay, I'll leave. Y'all know that this crazy man is not just gonna leave that easy. He's a psycho, and he 100% has something even more psychotic up his sleeve. So next, Louis decides to kidnap Emma's parents, and he kills them, which is absolutely crazy because these people had nothing to do with anything. After this, Emma, Cook, and Charlie spend the night hiding from Louis, and literally while Emma is asleep next to them, Charlie and Cook hook up again. This really, really, really upsets me, because the two of them f***ing is the entire reason that they are in this situation at all. And now you want to do it again as you are actively on the run from the person who's trying to kill you because of it. Make it make sense. It can't be that good. The sex cannot be that good. So the next morning, Cook wakes up and Emma is gone. Cook goes out into the woods. He finds Louis, and he also finds Emma's body hanging from a tree. Why? Please tell me why Louis keeps murdering people that have nothing to do with the situation. Like, why would he kidnap Emma and kill her instead of just going straight for Cook? Or even Charlie. Like, why target Emma? You see, Louis is just a really sloppy serial killer. There's no method to his madness. He's just doing whatever he wants at this point. The series ends with Cook and Louis getting into a huge fight. Cook is about to kill Louis, but ultimately he decides not to because he is still traumatized from the last person that he killed. And honestly, I really wanted to see Cook kill Louis. But I do appreciate the integrity. So yeah, that's it. That is the end of Skins. Unlike Cassie's episodes, I was able to pull a lot more from the relationship dynamics in Skins Rise. They had a lot more meaning and substance to me, which is just one of the main reasons why these two episodes were a lot more enjoyable. So first, there was Emma. What did she represent for Cook? To me, I think she represented a sense of stability, even though she herself wasn't very stable. I mean, she had a dead-end job, working at a gas station, no school, no nothing, but she was a nice girl. There was nothing necessarily chaotic about herself or her nature. So to me, Emma was kind of like a little glance into what a normal life and a normal romantic life could have been like for him. I also saw another person say on Reddit, Emma represented how shallow relationships had gotten for Cook, because at this point, after not receiving the same love that he would give to others, I feel like Cook is kind of in this place where there's no point in him loving anybody else because he knows that he's not going to receive it back. So even though I feel like he truly does have genuine feelings for Emma, he won't let it get anywhere past meaningless and transactional. And it's really sad because I think if Cook had just opened up his heart to Emma, they could have had a happy life together. But I think after Effy and after his parents, he just didn't have any room left in his heart to do that. On the other hand, we had Charlie. She was the chaos. She was the bright, forbidden flame that could see straight through Cook, and he knew not to touch that flame, but he just couldn't help but to do so. I see a lot of fans say that Charlie looks like Effy, and a lot of fans think it was intentional. Honestly, I don't think this girl looks like Effy at all, and I don't even think that they have similar personalities. Like, sure, they're both chaotic party girls, but I think that's kind of all they have in common. I don't see Effy ever being in a relationship with someone like Louis. Effy had a lot of problems, but I think she had enough self-respect and security within herself to not be in a relationship with someone like that. And Effy was a lot more of a trickster in her relationships. She maintained a certain level of control in the midst of the people she decided to get close to and pull away from. But Charlie, she was just straight up sloppy. Like, she just wanted to get her hands on anyone who was able to distract her from her abusive relationship with Louis. On another note, going deeper into what I mentioned earlier, I loved Cook's characterization, and I see a lot of fans that were upset about Cook's personality change because, you know, he wasn't as fun or bright as he was. But even though he might have been more bland and more serious, he still had that same amount of complexity that he always did. He was heavily flawed. He made stupid decisions, and even though I did not agree with the single thing that this man was doing throughout these two episodes, it was exhilarating to see him living his messy life as a lost individual who seems to just have nothing to gain out of life anymore. Now, on to the John Foster topic. At first, I did not think that he was the one who Cook was saying that he killed. Throughout the episodes, he seemed to be very shaken and regretful about it, so I was like, no way killing his best friend's murderer would have that much of an effect on him. But at the end of the day, I guess murder is murder, no matter who it is or what that person may have done. And Cook put on a tough act, but deep down, he was really just a fragile, sensitive guy who wanted nothing more than to be loved. So yeah, I can see how killing, even if it was for revenge, would have this type of lifelong effect on him. And honestly, if that changed him so much, I can't even begin to imagine what Emma's death may have done to him, because even though Cook didn't kill Emma, he kind of got her into this whole mess, and unlike John Foster, she was completely innocent. So I can only imagine that this whole situation f***ed him up more than he already was at the beginning of these 2 episodes. So similarly to Skin's Fire, I would absolutely love to see an elongated version of this and to see in which direction Cook goes with his personality and what he decides to do after this, because there's no way he could have walked out of this unchanged. I think I would give Skin's Rise an 8.5 out of 10. I could have even gone 9 or even 10 if there was just one mention of Freddy. Even if Cook had just pulled a little photo of Freddy out of his wallet, I would have given it more points. So, what are my final thoughts on season 7 as a whole? My honest, humble opinion is that I think they could have done better. All 3 parts, Fire, Pure, and Rise, they all could have been better. I really battle with the direction they took with it. Parts of me really loves the fact that it's just a little piece of life into the adulthood of these characters, meaning we didn't necessarily need a connection to past events every 5 minutes, because real life just isn't like that. There's people who I was really close with in high school who I don't even think about today. However, sometimes watching season 7 could just feel pointless. In defense of season 7, I see a lot of fans saying, oh, it doesn't feel like Skins, but in my opinion, it shouldn't. Like, tuning into season 7 should not feel like tuning into Gens 1 and 2. These characters have been through so much, have grown up and changed. Do you, working a full-time job, weighed down with bills, responsibilities, loneliness, regrets, and trauma, feel the same way that you did in high school? Probably not. I feel like season 7 captured a nice, realistic snapshot into the loneliness of adulthood, and I saw one person say that season 7 is almost like a PSA for people who idolized these characters when they were younger. Like, maybe you don't want to be like Effy, because this is where she ended up. But like I said, overall, I just think there were some things we could have done better, and yeah, I think overall I would give Skins season 7 5 out of 10. Half of me appreciates it and half of me just wants to scrap it and rewrite it. So yes, that was my little recap and discussion on Skins season 7. I would love to know you guys' thoughts, what you thought of the characterization of Effy, Cassie, and Cook in these episodes. What did you think of the side characters, the plots? Were they boring? Were they pointless? Or could you appreciate the artistic direction that they chose to go? Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in my next video.